been primarily based on my observations with high resolution phase contrast microscopy. So now I'm going to present to you some of those microscopic findings which over the last 2 decades have allowed me to see these things at a cellular level, and beyond that develop some molecular concepts of health and disease which provide the scientific basis of my presentation and the development of the concept of the orpic state. So let's go and look at some photomicrographs of blood. This is peripheral blood smear. I would consider it as an excellent example of a healthy smear. It represents approximately 20,000 magnification of the blood. This is a phase contrast microscope. The cells here have not been fixed. So in real life, you can see these cells moving around, changing their shape. But when they are allowed enough space, they do become regular. Notice that they are round generally. They have smooth outlines. They don't stick to each other. And notice that there is a yellow halo around them. Now the halo is actually an optical effect. However, this halo does signify an important fact. Healthy cells have a slight negative charge on their surface. That's why they don't stick to each other. Like fresh berries, they roll off each other, but they don't stick. When the cherries are left in the sun for several hours, the skin of the cherries gets damaged, cracks. The juice exudes, comes out, and makes cherries sticky. Precisely the same thing happens to the cells. The negative surface charge, which keeps the cells separate from each other, is actually due to certain fatty substances, including phospholipids and cholesterol. Healthy cholesterol, like healthy water, is essential for health. Polluted water can cause disease. Polluted cholesterol can cause disease. It's one of the great ironies of our time that the world of cardiology and the mainstream doctors do not understand the difference between pure cholesterol, which is essential for the health of cell membranes, and the oxidized, denatured cholesterol, which damages the cell membrane, causes them to clump up and interfere with their function. That is the subject of another video on heart disease, so I don't want to spend too much time, except to emphasize that low cholesterol is a bad sign for patients with chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia. It is a clearest indication that their cell membranes are being damaged and their function is being impaired. Let's go and look at some more pictures. In this photomicrograph, you have the red blood cells. Notice that some of the red blood cells are beginning to show spike formation or crinkling of the surface. These are the earliest changes of damage. These 3 cells are the white blood cells, or a type of immune cell which is called polymorphonuclear leukocytes. These are the hunter cells, And sometimes they change their shape very rapidly. When you look at the peripheral blood smears, freshly drawn and freshly prepared, and when these smears are not stained and they are not processed in any way, one can then truly study the dynamics, the interactions between the various components of the bloodstream. In this photomicrograph, you see a large clot. There are some white bodies in the clots, and there are some black bodies in this clot. You notice that there are also a very large number of pale gray bodies. The black bodies are the black or the dark PLFs. The white bodies are the white or the pale PLFs. And the pale dark bodies are blood platelets. One of the important discoveries that our group at the Institute has made is that the blood clots and unclots in the circulation at all times. Just like you add a little culture to milk and overnight milk turns into yogurt. So the culture is of course composed of some microbes. Those microbes turn milk into curdles of yogurt. Exactly the same process happens in the blood. The blood proteins are curdling all the time. But there is a difference. When you turn milk into yogurt with cultures, the yogurt does not by itself become uncurdled. Another analogy is when you boil an egg. The white of the egg solidifies when you boil it. Now, under certain circumstances, indeed you can take the solidified form of the white of an egg and redissolve it so it would look like the normal liquid form of the white of an egg, an unboiled egg. In the blood, the curdling and decurdling occurs all the time. I decided to call it PLFs because from a clinical standpoint, it's a very important concept, and it allows us to explain many things which cannot be explained any other way. As for mainstream physicians who might happen to be watching this video, I think I'm going to convince you by showing these photomicrographs that what we are looking at is not an artifact. So let's go. There are two photomicrographs. These are the red blood cells. Some of them are pretty badly damaged. But notice that in some of these red blood cells, you see these dark bodies. This cell has 4. This cell has several. This cell has several. So we call them dark PLFs. In this second photomicrograph, you also see these dark bodies. They are both phase contrast, high resolution photomicrographs. But in this you see that the bodies inside the cells now are pale in color. So this is an example of a dark PLF, and this is an example of light PLF. For many years I was told that these are mycoplasma. I never really accepted that because there was no clear proof that they were mycoplasma. So I would rather not jump to a conclusion and call something mycoplasma unless I have a clear, scientifically valid and acceptable proof. Here is another photomicrograph. Notice here that there are many cells which have these dark bodies, which we call PLFs, and I'm going to show you how these dark bodies will come out of the cells and multiply, grow in strings and beads, and meet the criteria of multiplication. Now in this you also notice that there are some pale bodies. Now these are the pale PLFs. I suspect that most of these pale PLFs probably are Candida, but as I mentioned, unless you can specifically stain them, in my view, it is wrong to jump to the conclusion that these are Candida organisms. Now you notice that there are some of these dark bodies outside the cells, very much like there are these dark bodies in the cells. So these are intracellular dark PLFs. These are extracellular pale PFs. These are extra of course means outside the cells. So this photomicrograph shows you pale PLFs and dark PLFs outside the cells, as well as dark PLFs inside the cells. Let's move on. For years, as I indicated, I used to see those dark bodies and I thought they were artifacts because no one in the literature had really described those as dark living bodies. And I remember the time when one late night with the last patient in our New York office, I saw these dark bodies. My wife happened to be sleeping in the other room. Rather than wake her up, I started studying them. And something amazing happened. Over the next 3 to 4 hours, I photographed. These dark bodies come out. Notice here that this is a red blood cell which is collapsing, and there is a dark body here which is associated with the membrane, and there is a dark body which seems to be just coming out. Similarly, this cell is collapsing. There is a dark body here, there is a dark body here, and there is another dark body here, and something seems to be coming out. Well, at this point, you can still say these things could be just artifacts. Notice here now that in this cell, that some of the dark bodies are associated with the membranes, and some of the dark bodies are coming out, and some are still in the cell. Here you have some dark bodies in the cells. Here, a dark body shows you a curvilinear appearance. And here, there is a red blood cell, something is coming out, and then it seems to have branched off. So one branch seems to be coming down like that, and the other branch is going in the opposite direction. These were some of the pictures that I took that night, which made me reevaluate our concept. Let's go on. Again, you notice that some cells are very healthy. Some cells have these pale central areas. Some cells are beginning to show the spike formation of the surface. Some of these cells have these pale bodies in them. Some of these cells, the dark bodies seem to be bursting out like the rays of sun. Of course, these are dark rays. But notice here that here is a cluster of free-floating dark PLFs. And one could look at this and one could look at this, and it would be hard to say, well, they really are living beings. But look at this here, an interesting phenomenon. Here, the same dark PLFs are arranging themselves in a little chain, and they're bound together by a little thread. And sometimes these dark bodies will grow like strings of beads in different directions. As the cell is collapsing, these bodies are coming out. Again, here is a cell, you see the dark bodies in the cell. Here is a cell, the dark bodies are coming to the membrane, and here they are emerging from the membrane and they are spreading like little beads. When I first saw this, I thought, could it be a spirochete? But it was not moving in the corkscrew fashion that spirochetes do. So I knew that this is not a spirochete. And because I do not know exactly what it is, the general term PLF, dark PLF, primordial life form, appeals to me. And then I looked around and I was curious whether this was the only one. And of course I found several of those dark PLFs in different configurations. Again, if one were to see this, it would be difficult to separate them from mere artifacts or cellular debris.